At the dawn of days was Vrta, the power that creates. Where nothing had reigned supreme, Vrta gave life to all. Shaped here and there, spawned now and then, formed the one and in chorus the other. And where attraction arose, the wild thrived and multiplied. But out of the untamed wielder appeared, the power that rules, the power of willful violence that bends here and there, that curves now and then according to ideals and cravings, that harvests the one and rejects the other. With time, wielder's appetite grew, and the birth was inevitable. Because violence begets hates, begets Vratha, the power that reacts. Born of wielder's hunger for Vrta's design, Vratha is everywhere and nowhere. Always close where mother meets mother, always mounting in strength with the force of the violence. The arrival of the black fruit is fated, is inescapable, is terrible. And it happens, has happened, will happen again, that Vratha grows boundless, furious, blind in her hunger. It happens that the blackness grows flesh and spirit and the sharpest of claws, that the fruit sheds seeds that poison the first, in the aim to suppress the second. Then dies all. Welcome to my dungeon. This poem I just read is the underlying principle of the entire Symbaroum lore. So it makes for a good intro for this deep dive into the lore and philosophy of the Symbaroum RPG, in which I will also compare to the philosophy of Hayao Miyazaki as seen in the movies Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind, The Castle in the Sky, and Princess Mononoke. If this interests you, like the video and subscribe to my channel. Thank you. Now, let's get into it. As we can learn from this poem, there are three cosmic principles that shape the world of Symbaroum. Vrta, the power that creates. Wielder, the power that rules. And Vratha, the power that reacts. When Vrta rules, unbridled white nature grows. Vast forests, fertile meadows, marshes, rivers and lakes, overflowing with all kinds of life. Imagine a world before humans, or maybe Pandora from Avatar for reference. Now comes Wielder. Wielder starts to alter the wild. It is the power of intelligence, tool use, and civilization. By this power, the unbridled wild is turned into a garden. Forests are turned into plantations, meadows and marshes into fields and pastures, and wild animals into livestock. But doing this begets Vratha. Vratha is death and destruction in all of its forms. Like the four horsemen of the apocalypse, war, famine, plague, and death in personal union. These three principles are no guiding force, no gods, but that makes them no less real. I think we all have a concept of the first two, Vrta and Wielder, nature and civilization. It would be easy to mistake the main conflict in Symbaroum as a clash between civilization and wilderness. But that interpretation is missing a key point. Every party involved in the struggle for Symbaroum, the tribes, elves and Ambrians, the Iron Pact, Church of Prios, the Sacred of the Old Blood, all of them are product of civilization, of Wielder. While Vrta might be powerful, and there are many dangers in the wild, including ferocious animals, even godlike spirits, they are by their nature without an imposing order. And as such, they are no match against the ordered, united forces of Wielder. Nature cannot defend itself against civilization. You might say that is wrong, that diseases and natural disasters are nature defending itself. But according to the philosophy of Symbaroum, that is Vratha, a third power. And I can see why you would conceptualize it separate from the other two. A blight-born beast kills people and animals alike. It does not distinguish between Vyrta and Wielder. Neither does a storm nor drought. Both nature and civilization suffer from natural disasters. Wherever Vratha reacts to the transgressions of civilization, the wild suffers as well. What makes Vratha so powerful and dangerous is the magic that exists in the world of Symbaroum. Here, Vratha does not simply manifest in global warming and mass extinction. It manifests in corruption and blight. Corruption is most often seen as a side effect of using magic. Mystic, who uses the powers of creation to alter the world to their desires, accumulates corruption and eventually manifests blight, a mark of corruption. And in the most extreme case, the corruption takes over completely, and the mystic becomes a blight-born abomination. While this might be the most prevalent influence of Vratha's backlash, it is not the only one. If a civilization cultivates the land too much, cuts down too many forests, breeds too much livestock, and alters the work of Vyrta too far from its wild origins, Vratha will destroy entire countries. The crops will wither and die. The livestock will become blight-born, and the dead rise from their grave. In the end, nothing but ash and dust will remain. That will happen regardless of the use of magic. Mystic powers are just the fastest and most obvious way to do it. They are the strongest form of Wielder, the fastest way to cultivate Vyrta and wake Vratha. We also have to keep in mind that while Vratha is a reaction to Wielder, Wielder is born from Vyrta. After all, intelligent beings came out of the chaos of nature and in time created civilization. So Vyrta begets Wielder begets Vratha. It seems inevitable. And if you have watched my video on the secret history of humans, you will have found that the cycle of cultivation and destruction has played itself out half a dozen times just in remembered history, and probably more often than that. The obvious questions now are why and how to break the cycle. And the answer that the survivors of each civilization have come up with is moderation in cultivation, and especially in the use of mystic arts. It is possible to strike a balance between Vyrta and Wielder, between nature and civilization. Don't cultivate too much. Don't turn every wild forest into fields and animals into livestock. Leave room for the wild and Vyrta to prosper without civilization's influence. But human lifespans are short, and after a few generations, inevitably this hard-earned wisdom will be forgotten. And another, more pressing concern makes the people ignore temperance and moderation. It is a simple truth that cultivated land produces vastly more food than wilderness, and thus can sustain a bigger population. And it is in the nature of all of Vyrta's creations to grow and procreate. Every creature has the instinct to create as much offspring as it can, however it can. The population that wilderness can sustain is very limited. If the people manage to grow their numbers against the threats from predators and the environment, at some point they will run out of game to hunt and plants to forage. And if there are no new hunting grounds to migrate to, the people have to make a serious decision every time a child is born. Can we sustain this child, or will we starve trying? Can we allow this child to live? This is a question that only people will ponder. Animals just procreate until they run out of food and starve. But people have come up with a different solution. Cultivating plants and raising livestock produces much more food than wilderness. Better yet, you can end your nomadic lifestyle and build walls to keep the predators out. You can also support soldiers to man those walls. Farming produces so much food that not everyone has to contribute to its production. Through cultivation, a society has the capacity to have craftsmen and artists. Man, civilization is great. Ask any goblin who can live outside the Davokar without the constant fear of something eating him. This concept is even reinforced through Symbarum's gameplay, at least in the 5e version. If you go on expeditions into the Davokar, everything will be trying to eat you. You'll have a hard time getting a long rest to recover hit points, be it because of a lack of food or nightly attacks from predators. Heck, at one time my group was attacked by a carnivorous bush. And to recover some of your resources, like hit die, you need to take an extended rest in a safe location. And that is most likely a haven of civilization, an outpost, a settlement. Best to go back to Thistlehold and sell the spoils of your expedition, visit the saloons of Symbaroum, and enjoy all the delights civilization has to offer. But if you take civilization too far, you will poison the land and deplete its natural resources. Fields become infertile, livestock becomes so overbred that it cannot live without the help of people, water becomes scarce and putrid. If you put too many people in too confined spaces, plagues will run rampant, spread quickly from city to city through trade and travel. This all leads to tension, violence, and war, further reinforcing the downfall of civilization. And all of this is accelerated by greed. If some take more than they need, there's waste of resources, and you have to produce more for fewer people. If you use your soldiers to steal and conquer from your neighbors, there's even more waste and suffering. This is Vratha. It is both nature no longer supporting the cultivation and civilization turning on itself. We have numerous examples of this in our own human history. The fall of Ur, of Babylon, the Bronze Age collapse, the fall of Rome, just to name a few from the top of my head. Empires rise and empires fall. It seems inevitable. By the way, The Curse of Empire by Atlantean Codex is a badass meta album on this topic. Check it out. Notice that I use the term people and not humans, because I think that elves and trolls are no exceptions to this cycle. One big advantage that those two species have over humans is their long lifespans. It takes them a lot longer to forget the lessons and wisdom of the past. But they still cultivate and use mystical powers. Trolls also have a highly competitive society, where only the strong can prosper, and elves willingly accept some highly corrupting magic rituals because they help their agenda. So I think that trolls and elves would experience the cycle of Wielder and Wratha if given the chance. It's just that humans are so much faster lived and therefore move through these cycles more rapidly. And in doing so, they not only take the chance to build and destroy civilization from the older races, but also serve as a deterring example. Also, about elves. The Iron Pact tells us that it was sent by an elven civilization far to the west, and that those elves no longer take part in the Iron Pact struggles. They have no contact at all. There are a few things that I find suspect about this story. For one, the elves arrived with a mighty army, so mighty in fact that they could defeat corrupted Symbar and its legions of darkness. Only a highly developed civilization could send out an army like that. The elves have also mastered highly destructive mystical arts. To me, that does not sound like people who have found a way to live in harmony with Würta. It is also very suspect that the elves have no contact at all with that supposed elven realm to the west. No. Given what I know about Wielder and Ratha, I suspect the elves came as refugees, fleeing a blight-stricken land just as the humans did. That gives a new meaning to the Iron Pact's maxim, nevermore. They do not actually mean not to repeat the sins of Symbar, but to never repeat their own mistakes. I mean, if they were trying to keep the humans from repeating the cycle of Symbaroum, why did they not intervene when the people of Lystra and Alberator, and supposedly every other human kingdom to the south and west of Davokar, made the same mistake and brought Ratha upon themselves? For a race so long-lived as the elves, this seems very short-sighted. So, is there a way to break this cycle of destruction? Maybe, but I don't think it is possible without the emergence of immortal wisdom. Only if the lessons of temperance and moderation are never forgotten, and all societies and civilizations accept that there cannot be unlimited growth within a limited world. While researching my lore videos, I could not help but notice many similarities in themes between Symbaroum and the words of Hayao Miyazaki in Studio Ghibli. There are so many that I would consider them a definite inspiration for the setting. By the way, Yearning, if you are seeing this, give us an Appendix N for Symbaroum. I'd love to know where you got your inspiration from, so that I can get inspired as well. Take Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind. It's considered the first Ghibli movie, even though it was made before the founding of the studio. Nausicaa plays in a world that is recovering from a great war and mass extinction. There are only a few powerful city-states, separated by vast deserts. Between them is also an enormous forest, inhabited by giant insects, that has grown over the ruins of the old civilization, sealing its toxic waste and ruins beneath its roots. There's also rising tension and war brewing between the city-states that have grown too large and ambitious to support their growing population. So the Valley of the Wind is attacked and occupied in search of an ancient superweapon, and the creatures of the forest retaliate and march to destroy the rest of humanity. In The Castle in the Sky, people make a living digging up relics from an ancient fallen civilization. Eventually, the story leads to the titular Castle in the Sky, where an ancient fallen civilization has hidden their weapons of mass destruction. Finally, in Princess Mononoke, we see the creatures of the forest in a deadly conflict with the encroaching human civilization with its fields, foundries, and wars. The titular princess wears a mask, not unlike the witches of Davokar, and the characters converse with the gods of the forest. Chief among them, an ancient god of life and death, a distant force of nature that, despite all of its powers, does not care for the struggles of the creatures it created. But when it is attacked, its head taken by the power-hungry humans becomes a mindless force of indiscriminate destruction. Here we also see corruption. When a giant boar, one of the gods of the forest, is struck by a human bullet, the wound festers, and the hatred spawns black, ink-like tentacles. Only touching these marks Ashitaka, the protagonist with the blight, and he becomes exiled from his people, goes on a quest searching for a cure. Combine the themes of these movies with classic fantasy tropes and the brilliant art of Swedish artist Martin Grip, and you get Symbaroum. Man, I wish one of my players would play a character like Nausicaa or Ashitaka, one who could see both sides of the conflict, reject violence and seek a peaceful solution to the war between Ambrians, the tribes and the Iron Pact. But I always get murder hobos, and I probably deserve them. Anyway, that is my take on the themes and philosophy of Symbaroum and Studio Ghibli movies. I wish thee safe travels, dreamers, until we shall meet again.